remember coming here in the closing days of my last race 5 years ago. I remember the enthusiasm, the generosity, the warmth of the people of Virginia. I remember that when I first announced for my candidacy as president back in 2007, the first major elected official outside Illinois was a certain gentleman named Tim Kaine. And Ann Kane's right there. And I came here and I said to Tim and Ann, "What the heck are y'all doing?" Because nobody can pronounce my name yet. But they believed in me, I think, even before Michelle did. So I will always have warm, fond memories of Richmond, Virginia. Part of the reason I've got warm memories is because I got good friends here. That includes your governor, Terry McAuliffe. That includes your Attorney General, Mark Herrick. That includes your next Lieutenant Governor, Justin Fairfax. That includes outstanding members of Congress like Bobby Scott and Don McEachin. Your mayor, LeVar Stoney. And it includes the next governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Ralph Northam. I want to thank Ralph for getting me fired up backstage. And since he said a few nice things about me, I've got to embarrass him in return. Because, Richmond, this is somebody that you will be proud to have as your governor. Ralph's whole life has been about honest, responsible service to others. One of the stories I love is about Ralph and how when he was a cadet at BMI, his fellow cadets elected him president of the honor corps. Now let me say this. When I was in college, I was kind of a goof-off, so they would not have given me that honor. But think about that. Even as a young man, people already recognized that this was somebody whose character made him trustworthy. Somebody with a code of honor and integrity. They trusted him to hold himself and all of them to a high standard. They trusted him to do the right thing, even when nobody's looking. And isn't that what we want in our leaders? Isn't that who we want making tough decisions on our behalf? Honesty, integrity, a willingness to put others before yourself. That's the way that Ralph has always lived his life. In the Army, he served at Walter Reed. And I can tell you, as somebody who visited Walter Reed consistently throughout my 8 years, what it meant to have a medical staff that would literally help to rebuild people's lives after they had served our country in such a profound way. In Germany, treating our wounded warriors from the first Iraq War. When he left active duty, he and his wonderful wife, Pam, an educator, decided to settle down on the same Chesapeake Bay where he had grown up. And he took care of kids, specializing in pediatric neurology in Norfolk. Now, you know you got to be smart to do pediatric neurology. It's hard to pronounce, much less do. So he devoted himself to the next generation, just like Pam did. He taught not just neurology to students at Eastern Virginia Medical School, but he also taught ethics. And for nearly 20 years, he has given his time freely to care for terminally ill children in Portsmouth. And if you ask him, he'll say those kids have given him more than he could ever give back. That's Ralph Northam. That's who is seeking your support for governor. Justin Fairfax's story isn't so different. He didn't grow up with much, but with scholarships, with help from a hard-working mom. Justin went to college, went to law school, gave over his life to public service just to make sure that any striving young kid could have the same chance as he did. So, the point is, you've got really good candidates. You've got people who will make you proud. You've got people who are in this race for the right reasons. At a time when so many of us can be so cynical about government and public service, to have somebody step up who you can trust and who just wants to do right by the people of Virginia, that's worth something. And when Ralph was tending to our wounded warriors, he wasn't thinking about whether they were Democrats or Republicans. He was thinking about them one way and only one way, as Americans who defended our country, and how could he make sure that they were healed. And so the question now, at a time when our politics just seems so divided and so angry and so nasty, is whether we can recapture that spirit, whether we support and embrace somebody who wants to bring people together. Yes, we can. We can do that. Look, I've always believed in that kind of politics. Yes, we can. You know, because that's American democracy at its best. That's the politics I've always believed in. That's what Ralph believes in, Justin believes in, Mark believes in. I believe that when everybody gets involved, when everybody gets engaged, when everybody pushes in the same direction, that's when good things happen. We're at our best not when we're trying to put people down, but when we're trying to lift everybody up. We're at our best not when we try to find what's wrong with somebody else, but when we find the decency and goodwill and common effort that so often we see in our neighborhoods and in our congregations, and that we try to impart into our children. That's what we believe. And we have to be honest, that kind of politics doesn't always carry the day. And we live at a time when all sorts of forces conspire to turn good people off from politics. The way we get our news, the way money floods into our campaigns, the way our political districts are drawn so that candidates are rewarded for pandering to the extremes instead of trying to keep common ground and forging consensus. And by the way, Ralph wants to end the practice of gerrymandering so our districts are drawn in a nonpartisan way. We shouldn't have politicians choosing their voters. We should have voters choosing those who would serve them. That's one more difference between him and his opponents. But all these things conspire so that our politics doesn't reflect our values. Look, folks don't feel good right now about what they see. They don't feel as if our public life reflects our best. Instead of our politics reflecting our values, we've got politics infecting our communities. Instead of looking for ways to work together and get things done in a practical way, we've got folks who are deliberately trying to make folks angry, to demonize people who have different ideas, to get the base all riled up because it provides a short-term tactical advantage. And so sometimes that can feel frustrating. And look, I've been in this arena for a while, but what I also know is as frustrated as you get, the goodness of America, the goodness and decency and hard work and responsibility and sacrifice that's on display by the American people every single day in their communities all across this great country, all across this great state, people of every walk of life. It doesn't matter whether they're white or black or Hispanic or Asian or Native American, whether they're disabled, whether they are gay or straight. There are people all across this country that want to do things better, that want to work together. And I've seen the possibilities of our democracy. You've seen it. Look what we did over the last 8 years. Created jobs for the jobless, made it easier for young people to earn a higher education, covered more families with health insurance, brought home more of our brave troops, made sure we were looking after our veterans, made America a more respected leader around the world, started making sure that we're dealing with climate change in a serious way. We know what we can achieve when we put our minds to it and when we're working together. And this year we've seen countless people get active and organized and march, not just for themselves, not just for their own narrow interests, but for the well-being of others. We've seen people who never thought about jumping into the arena before. Suddenly they're grabbing a clipboard. They're putting on some marching shoes. They're going to run for something. They're going to go out and fight for a cause. Right here in Virginia, there are 50 first-time candidates running for your House of Delegates. People who will write your laws about public schools and fair wages and criminal justice reform. More than half of them are women. A dozen of them are millennials. So if you want a House of Delegate that looks more like Virginia and understands your life, then make sure to get out and vote for the whole ticket, not just a little bit of the ticket, the whole ticket. Because ultimately it does come down to you. You know, I've said before, the most important office in a democracy is not president, it's not governor, it's not mayor, it's the office of citizen. Because in a democracy, ultimately you decide what kind of politics we have. You decide it by what you do and what you don't do. You decide by whether you're active or whether you're not. You decide by whether you decide to use your voice and your franchise to make things better, or whether you succumb to cynicism, it's in your hands. So the question for you tonight and over the next 19 days is, do you want a politics of division and distraction, or do you believe in a better kind of politics? One where we work together and listen to each other and move this country forward. Do you want an economy that only works for the very top? Or do you want an economy that works for everybody? That lifts up a strong, vibrant middle class and creates ladders of opportunity for everybody who's willing to work hard so that they can get their little piece of the American dream? Do you believe that every child should get a good education? That every worker should get the skills they need to get a good new job with decent wages and decent benefits? Do you believe that everybody should be judged not by the color of their skin or who they love or their last name, but by the content of their character and their contributions to this great state? You have a choice to make. And this choice matters. I know what Ralph Northam believes. I know what Justin Fairfax believes. They've got plans and policies that will reflect your values and your priorities to create jobs and to educate kids and to keep Virginia clean and safe and healthy. And the question is, will you show up to vote on November 7th and give them that chance? Because it's up to you. This election comes down to you. And I have to say, by the way, off-year elections, midterm elections, Democrats sometimes y'all get a little sleepy. You get a little complacent. Now this is not my opinion. This is the data. This is the data. During presidential elections, everybody gets all excited. And then when it's an off-year election, suddenly everybody, what, there's an election going on? Huh? And so as a consequence, folks wake up and they're surprised. How come we can't get things through Congress? How come we can't get things through the State House? Because you slept through the election. But the stakes now don't allow you to sleep. Because it's going to come down to how bad you want it. I don't want to hear folks complaining and not doing something about it. All the young people out here, I think that it's great that you hashtag and meme, but I need you to vote. I tend not to watch a lot of TV, even though I've got a little more time on my hands, but Michelle and I get the same commercials in D.C. as y'all do here. And I've seen enough of them to know that Ralph's opponent is pulling from that same old playbook. Don't boo, vote. Don't boo. Booing doesn't do any good. Voting does some good. But I mean, we've seen this so many times before. You got the advertisement, and there's some voice, ominous, and there's, everything's kind of dark, and there's like a bunch of just letting you know that somebody's coming to get you, that our values are at risk, if you vote for Ralph, they don't really tell you exactly why. We've seen it before. And it's a tactic, by the way, that shows Ralph's opponent doesn't really think very highly of Virginians. Because I don't think anybody really thinks that somebody who spent his life performing surgery on soldiers and children suddenly is cozying up to street gangs. You know, that strains credulity. That sounds like a fib. Sounds like an okey-doke. Nobody believes that. Does anybody really believe that Ralph spent his whole life in Old Dominion and then he's going to run for governor and suddenly try to erase Virginia's history? That is not what this election's about. That is distraction. That is phony. That is divisive. It's not true. Look, we all have valid concerns about crime. We have legitimate concerns and even legitimate differences around how to manage immigration in a way that's orderly and fair. But the fact is that crime and illegal immigration are nearly as low as they've been in decades. They were last year as well. And Ralph's opponent knows it. He's gone on record in the past condemning the very same kind of rhetoric that he's using right now. And if he honestly thought these were serious issues, he'd offer serious solutions. But he's not, because what he's really trying to deliver is fear. What he really believes is that if you scare enough voters, you might score just enough votes to win an election. And that's what makes this kind of anything goes politics just so damaging and corrosive to our democracy. It's just as cynical as politics gets. It's not going to create jobs. It's not going to educate kids. It won't clear up traffic. It won't clean up the environment. It won't protect your health care. I mean, you notice I haven't been commenting a lot on politics lately. But here's one thing I know. If you have to win a campaign by dividing people, you're not going to be able to govern them. You won't be able to unite them later if that's how you start. So Ralph Northam believes we should have an orderly immigration system, that we should crack down on criminals and gangs and put them behind bars. Or if they're not from this country and they're engaged in criminal act, they should be gone. He understands that, but he also believes that we can accomplish those things without fanning anti-immigrant sentiment that makes none of us safer. He believes that every young person should get a great education and every worker should have the tools they need to find a good job in growing industries, and that's really what is going to make a difference in the lives of Virginians all across this state. He's a hunter and an Army vet and a doctor who knows better than most what assault weapons can do. And he knows that we can protect our rights and our kids at the same time. He's not trying to scare somebody. He's trying to put in place sensible solutions. And let me just say something about history. You know, Ralph believes that if we're going to talk about our history, then we should do it in a way that heals, not in a way that wounds, not in a way that divides. We shouldn't use the most painful parts of our history just to score political points. We saw what happened in Charlottesville, but we also saw what happened after Charlottesville, when the biggest gatherings of all rejected fear and rejected hate. And the decency and goodwill of the American people came out. That's how we rise. We don't rise up by repeating the past. We rise up by learning from the past and by listening to each other and knowing that we're all flawed. But we still try to presume some baseline measure of goodness and decency and patriotism. And we look for the good in other people, not the worst. And we think of ourselves as Americans first. That's how we should be thinking about our history. Listen, I've written about this before. My father was from Kenya, as you know. Well, some of you know. Some of you may have forgotten. But I've written about the fact that my mother, you can trace her lineage, and like I'm a 8th or 9th or 10th or something cousin removed from Jefferson Davis, who was the head of the Confederacy. Think about that. I'll bet he's spinning in his grave. Right? So the point is that that's America. And we claim all of our history, the good and the bad. And we can acknowledge that Thomas Jefferson, one of Virginia's most famous sons, owned and sold slaves. That's not disputable. And we can also acknowledge that he wrote the words, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness." And we can recognize that even if our past is not perfect, we can honor the constitutional ideals that have allowed us to come this far and to keep moving toward a more perfect union. That's what America is. That's who we are. That's who we are. Why are we deliberately trying to misunderstand each other and be cruel to each other and put each other down? That's not who we are. It was those ideals provided to us by our founders that drew waves of immigrants to our shores, that drove waves of troops to storm beaches the world away to save democracy. It was those ideals that led generations of Americans to march for workers' rights and women's rights and voting rights and civil rights and LGBT rights, to expand the reach of our democracy. It's that conviction that we can choose our own course and shape our own destiny that's given generations of ordinary citizens the capacity, and no matter how bleak things seem, no matter how difficult things were, to keep moving this country forward. That's who we are. And it started in part right here in Virginia. That's what our founders understood. That for all of our flaws, our fate is in our own hands. That was the radical idea of America. That we decide our direction. Not some king, not some despot, but us, citizens. And our progress doesn't always go in a straight line. Sometimes we take 2 steps forward and we might take a step back. They understood that too. But the idea of America is not about going backwards. It's about pushing forward. America is a story of progress. Ralph Northam wants progress. He wants to take us forward, not backward. He wants to reach out for hope, not fear. That's where Justin Fairfax wants to take us. That's where you should want to take us. We need you to take this seriously, because our democracy is at stake, and it's at stake right here in Virginia. And if you play your part, not just voting yourself, but talking to your friends and your neighbors and fellow students and co-workers, then I'm confident Virginia will make the right choice, just like you did with Mark Warner, just like you did with Tim Kaine, just like you did with Terry McAuliffe, just like you gave me a chance. We need your help. Elections matter. Voting matters. You can't take anything for granted. You can't sit this one out. It's up to you. And if you believe in that better vision, not just of our politics, but of our common life, of our democracy, of who we are, if you want that reflected in our government, if you want our kids to see our government and feel good about it and feel like they're represented, and you want those values that you are teaching your children reinforced, the values of generosity and tolerance and community and hard work and responsibility, if you want to see that reflected, then you've got to go out there. You got 19 days to knock on some doors. You got 19 days to go out there and campaign. Is it 18 now? I started yesterday. That's why I need your help, to help me count and to help me make sure that we're making enough phone calls to get Ralph Northam elected, that we're making enough door knocks to get Justin Fairfax elected. If you do, I guarantee you, not only will Ralph Northam be your next governor and Justin Fairfax be your next lieutenant governor, but you are going to send a message all across this great country and all around the world of just what it is that America stands for. I love you, Virginia. God bless you.